Although Lützichen's three-body problem has been satirically referred to as old rogue literature because it repeatedly made women a villain and praised a stereotype carrier full of male gaze Zhuangyan as a goddess, I still believe that three-body problem has extremely important strategic significance in studying gender contradictions, especially in anti-masculinity. Here we may say something the feminists don't like: gender contradictions should focus on studying masculinity rather than feminism. There are three reasons. First, the birth of males marks the birth of gender. On the basis of sexual reproductive exchange of genetic material, males degenerate their gestation function and leave this function to other living individuals for their own purposes. Therefore, they do not need to consider the damage caused to their own body by birth. Therefore, the greater the proportion of male groups in the total energy of the population, the more unfavorable the continuation of the population. Second, masculinistal power has a deeper and solid material foundation than feminist rights, and has a profound and even source-based fundamental impact on human class culture, which is very convenient to study. Third, and most important point, masculinistal power anti-Marxism-Leninism is not only the anti-Marxism-Leninism seeking truth from facts but also the great ideal of anti-Marxism-Leninism to liberate all mankind. Regarding the first point, we can summarize the characteristics of this degenerative evolution of male birth. Biological individuals degenerate a more energy-consuming physiological function in exchange for a lower difficulty of survival, but genes continue to require the product of this physiological function, so this group of degenerates must rely on the undegenerated person to complete their life process. For those who have fertilized degenerate functions, this degeneration actually accomplishes the merger of the two major goals of survival and reproduction. As nurturing prostitutes, they can use a certain or even some individuals to contribute energy to their future gene continuation and make the utilized animal weak and unable to invest in the competition for survival resources with higher enthusiasm, which is also beneficial to the current gene continuation of those with degenerate functions. That is why males generally have higher enthusiasm for reproduction. The analogy of the fish who drains the sea in the three-body problem is very suitable for intuitively demonstrating the relationship between male and female sex and the entire race continuation. Classical evolutionary theory believes that life originates from the ocean, and we can use water to symbolize the resources needed for survival. Because the difficulty of reproduction of species is closely related to the amount of energy obtained in the ecological niche where the species is located, we compare pregnancy to a process that must be limited to water, and all physiological processes of organisms require water. Males do not have the task of fertilizing, and their existence will inevitably constitute a resource competition with the fertilizer and their offspring. Therefore, the more energy they occupy in the entire population life cycle, including but not limited to the larger the size and longer the lifespan the male have to the female, the more unfavorable it will be for the continuation of the entire population. That is, the lifespan, body size and number of males are more strictly related to the shortage of resources available for nurturing by the population in the ecological niche, just like only a wealthy family can raise playboys who is arrogant and extravagant. Those living in tight-padded life either do not have males, such as autologous organisms, or males are very small and cannot even live alone without females, such as Ostax, Bonellia viridis, Dinophilus gyrociliatus Schmidt, and male Lophius americanus involved in reproduction. In short, this evolutionary model formed by degeneration is the crystallization of animal nature. The stronger the animal nature, the more it harms others and benefits oneself. However, as a part of the entire ecosystem, this arrogant animal nature that is self-respecting cannot be hyped up, but is always subject to the causal relationship of energy flow, and sways with the water and cannot be kept alone, as if it is inseparable from the fish in rivers, lakes and seas. For example, due to the deterioration of sports performance, the male hippocampus is unable to avoid enemies, and regaining the degraded gestation function that should have been degraded to improve population survival. But as evolution continues, there will always be a day when the biodiversity is high enough and the food chain is complex to a certain extent, so that the ecosystem has strong self-repairability and stability to carry such a creature. The size, number, and lifespan of males in the population is almost the same as that of females or even higher than that of females. This is what we ourselves are as human beings. In summary, we have to face the fundamental fact that the gender system itself is inequality, and this inequality does not simply come from strength but from mechanisms. Men always show their strength and power to suppress women's proposals to fight for their own rights and interests, and to associate strength with males, which itself is contrary to the fact-seeking Marxism-Leninism. And where does their strength ultimately come from? Through degeneration, males hand over the burden and cost that they bring to the body to the females, and use the numerical advantages obtained from this to use in the survival competition with female individuals, further weakening the opponent and thus strengthening themselves, presenting a cycle of gain values through mechanics and stabilize mechanics through values, and laying the foundation for the pattern of the male is always strong and the female is always weak. Species with such energy flow patterns will naturally establish a social structure similar to that of a pattern. It can be described as some individuals in the group degenerate a certain function and separate them from the undegraded group A. Here degenerates are classified as group B. They reduce their survival difficulty because they do not have to bear the consumption brought to the body by the function, and have been widely present. However, A and B are both in urgent need of the product of this function, so B relies on A. A bears the loss that B does not have to bear because of the performance. The more products it produces, the more losses it will be. The greater the gap between A and B in terms of acquisition/output ratio, thus forming a pattern similar to A is like mother, B is like fetus. The more the fetus gets from mother, the weaker the mother becomes. If B gains overwhelming power through this mechanism, then when A and B face competition for limited resources, B can use overwhelming power to obtain priority distribution rights for resources and then dominate A. Therefore, the more things it produces and creates, the greater the opposition it faces. Driven by the instinct of seeking profit and avoiding harm, B showed an increasingly greedy and embezzled attitude in the process of allocating the value of demand produced by A. Correspondingly, A showed an increasingly regressive and avoiding tendency in the production of value of demand, and the conflict between the two sides became more intense, and perhaps the tighter the binding. Whether it is the micro-to-macro game between male and female, or the changes and iterations of social class contradictions, it suits this classification very much. From this we can see that capital and masculinity must be closely linked. The concept of capital, which continuously reduces costs and realizes benefits in order to proliferate as quickly and in large quantities as possible, is the same as the degenerate evolution principle of the birth of males. If you think this conclusion is too outrageous, then look at real life. In the context of the cyclical economic crisis of capitalism, are men more willing to fight capital, or do they firmly believe women's work efficiency is not as good as men, and the workplace is not where women should come, to exclude proletarian women so that men can get the advantage of applying for employment? Although they scold capital and feminist rights every day, the reason why they hate capital because feminist rights are simply that the consumer culture of capital has increased women's psychological expectations and expenses, making it impossible for men to gain the value of women with the smallest possible efforts. In other words, when it comes to making women devote themselves to their work with the smallest possible reward, masculinists and capital are exactly the same people. They will work together to squeeze women. Whether at work or in family, this is the source of different pay for equal work for women. This inequality continues to this day and has not ended. Therefore, masculinistal power will inevitably run contrary to the great ideal of Marxism-Leninism to liberate all mankind. As for the facts of masculinistal anti-Marxism-Leninism, we can think about the fallacy that equates feminism and individualism. Men always say that feminists emphasize that ingustation is individualism, exquisite selfishness. But the obvious fact is that urging women to get married and have children is beneficial to men. First of all, the energy consumption and discomfort caused by pregnancy will make women at a disadvantage in the competition with men, and have to retire to the family. Male applicants can use this to reduce the intensity of competition and gain the advantage of applying for the job. The redomestication of women will make them lose their channels and power to speak out in the public sphere. As husbands, men can, together with their families, sting women in family labor that is not protected by labor law, including forcing them to commit to mating without protective measures. And as wives, women who can only obtain living funds from their husbands are becoming more and more mute and cannot say anything about their suffering. So in the end, forcing a woman to have children is entirely a man who makes a profit through the blood and tears of women, and it stems from man's individualism and selfishness. As for the problems that masculinists always shout, such as high bride gifts, high marriage and love costs, they will only be more serious through the slogans that accelerate and version updates that imply that masculinists obtain supreme discourse power. Just look at history and you will know that when women's personal rights cannot be guaranteed, people know that the reward for having a daughter is far less than that of having a son, and that it is to work for families with sons. The process of abortion and killing a baby girl will be accelerated, so that the gender of men and women will rise step by step. In the end, in order to reduce losses, the atmosphere of giving wedding gifts will only be even more serious. In addition, the masculinistal clamors that deter public safety are such as 30 million bachelor warnings and the threat of unmarried and unborn every day. Where will they look for the marital maid providing sexual service? Look at the whole society's inertial fanaticism about having boys, considering the repeated bans of surrogacy institutions, considering the transnational marriage fever of opening your eyes to see the world. Just ask a question. Since masculinists are trying to obtain so-called sexual resources at a low price, then compared to keeping these foreign women's countries poor in wars, and maintaining the development difference with the man's motherland to ensure that sexual resources are cheap and easy to obtain, how much motivation the masculinists have to really liberate the world like a communist in order to make people everywhere live a prosperous and fast life. So masculinists are obviously stomping on imperialism and putting on the mask of justice like, I am a Marxist-Leninist. Lu Xun saw through their tricks 100 years ago. In the true story of Aq, when Aq thought of revolution, he planned to revenge and select girls as spoils of the war. He was purely jealous of the good life enjoyed by the old landlords, so he wanted to change the dynasty. Just like many male Reddit Mao today, if they express their strong desire for women and power, they may be disgusted and ridiculed. So they put on the mask of revolution and Marxian Leninism to gain people's trust, and it immediately works. To put it bluntly, they just use these words as waste cards and gold medals for avoiding death. If you criticize them for not having the style of Marxism-Leninism under the banner of Marxism-Leninism, for example, condemns them for supporting the legalization of prostitution and opposing severe punishment of surrogacy, they will behave like a hoodlum of Aq's bullying of the young nun. Since the monks can sexually harass nuns, why can't I? The politicians and wealthy businessmen who come and go to Virgin Island can't get the prostitute, why can't me? You are just trying to help women raise prices and materialize women. Then they throw a bunch of turtle men or boxing identity tags and they spread some well-known scandal about feminist, mixed with some unpleasant jokes of unknown origin, and finally laughed and cursed. Owing to women trigger the war will start because of feminist greed, but will not end because of their fear. Let's accelerate. Winning alone is better than losing both. The above is probably the type of masculinistal speech I have collected, which can probably summarize the psychological characteristics of masculinistalists. Compared with the liberation of all mankind, they care more about being a man who can dominate or even trample on the fate of women, and this is their bottom line. When you uncover the layers of disguises covering this bottom line, the violent deterrence they can't wait to show is the fundamental guarantee for ensuring that the masculinistal order lasts for so many years, and it is also the fundamental reason why masculinistism can grow so strong. Having got rid of the burden of gestation, the strength they gain by this mechanism can take the initiative in fighting for food and mating. The ecological niche in which they are located can almost guarantee that the gestation can successfully give birth to the child even if they eat leftovers of who have degraded the gestation function. What the male should consider is just how to seize more females. This is the reason why the masculinistal group is so strong, and it is also their greatest luck compared to women, not a disguised praise for embarking on a more difficult path, but don't having to becoming mothers who have worked hard. They can always be a child, asking for food and clamor to conquer everything, and measure everything based on their own interests and transform the world into what they need. It is not ridiculous to be a child. Even when a child has enough destructive power, his willfulness becomes an enviable and carefree manner. He can declare that everything in the world belongs to him and exchange it for submission and flattery by the rulers, and take the opportunity to imprint the virtues called dedication into the ruled souls. If you take a closer look at the image Zhuanyin that men like, you will know the clues. Lu Xun said, "Women are born with maternal and daughterly instincts, but not wifely instincts. The wifely role is imposed, a blend of motherhood and daughterhood." Zhuangyan obediently drank the wine handed by a strange man Luoji, and asked the wall-faced person who had never met before, "It must be difficult for you." It corresponds to what Luo Ji said. Everything around can hurt her, but she never hurt anyone. Zhuang Yan is as ignorant as a cared young daughter, unaware of danger, and as tolerant of all potential enemies as a loving mother. This is undoubtedly stupid in the background of the dark forest of the three-body problem, as if exposing her heart waiting for a flying sharp knife to penetrate her chest at any time. This stupidity is definitely not out of nature. After all, is nature really natural? A strong enough life will transform nature into a favorable appearance for itself, just as the education masculinists carefully curated in history, which will product girls like Zhuangyan. Girls must be ignorant, obedient, and unaggressive enough, like the sweet spring water that can be easily stirred by swimming fish and drunk by beasts, obediently behave like a table of unmoved feasts for men to enjoy. In this way, studying feminism alone is a trap that can be overwhelmed, because suppressing women's rights is the content of masculinity. The reason can be summarized in an old saying by the slave owner to trained slaves: "Make the ruled stay hungry." Only when the level of material abundance is barely above or below the threshold of basic needs can the ruled not having high expectations, and they will not be like the women who have high expectations for their partner that masculinists hate today, and will they be grateful and obedient enough to be ruled. This is called Zhang Yang's method of controlling people. It also shows how the gender relationship of male superiority and female inferiority becomes the source of hierarchy from material basis to behavioral psychology. So when masculinists see those who speak out for women's rights or hear women complaining about being persecuted by men, their attitude is not equal or helping their compatriots but more like slave owners seeing that the slaves have signs of resistance, so they hurriedly raise their sticks to scare the deterrent. If he is patient, he will generally be more gentle and indirect. Everyone is experiencing this, and it is always like this. If you talk about the historical fact that women are persecuted by men, his first reaction is that foreign objects are mixed in the language environment where they are located, so it need to be neutralized, so they hurry up and spit out a few more news that the man is persecuted by women, even if spreading rumors. If you say that a woman is not doing well, he will say that the man doesn't feel very happy either. If he has religious beliefs, he will bring out the supernatural existence of such powerful and indiscriminate orders as heaven or God or monsters, and declare in their name that women suffer such pain as the shackles they are born to bear. In short, women deserve to suffer and remain silent. This is a rule. There is a great resistance to breaking it. Although they are compatriots, they will not help, so don't mention it, it's useless. If there are onlookers who are both masculinistal, the suppression effect of this set of rhetoric will double. If the teller hasn't stopped talking at this point, or the masculinist has no patience at the beginning, he will enter the stage of direct deterrence. Similar to fighting with the other party in international negotiations, the masculinist will announce or directly remove some resources that the other party has or even attack the other party. If you say you are fearing men, he will say if you have way, you should not use invented and made by men. If you say a woman is oppressed, he will say this place is already very livable for women. Don't fail to appreciate what happiness really means while you are growing in happiness, or directly point to the door. Please find someone better qualified than me or somewhere better qualified than here. There are also people who threaten by, if you continue to say something like this, you will be sent to India. If you are still so disobedient, male workers will refuse to provide services to women. After all, we cannot tell who is a feminist. Drivers will refuse to give women a ride, and women will never be employed. This deterrence has been tried and done for thousands of years. The fundamental reason is that it hits the bottom code of humans as organisms and as gene carriers. Genes have the instinct to replicate infinitely, but the resources in the environment are limited. This is the same as the dark forest law of cosmic sociology in the three-body problem. Biology naturally hopes that other living organisms have greater survival pressure, referred to as not believing that others live better than themselves. Full of potential aggression towards others, people's desire to attack is generally higher for women, who are generally less able to resist than men, and the discriminatory perception of women are born inferior, women are femme fatale, women are harming the country. Consensus on the social dangers of women are just excuses for attacking and conditioned reflex slogans to guide the masses to attack. Therefore, the essence of masculinistal power is the flow of animal nature. The stronger the animal nature, the more harm others are. Because everyone has animal nature, Sometimes women will join the team that persecutes women, and accordingly, feminists desire to stop women's fratricide, so they put the slogan out, "Girls help girls." But from beginning to end, masculinists will not miss any opportunity to contempt, trample on women and spread this value. Whether before or after the slogan "Girls help girls" is issued, masculinists are united in spreading the story of girls hurt girls, regardless of whether the story is true or not, in order to prove the innate inferiority of women, fighting in the nest, and even mocking girls help girls in turn, providing legitimacy for hurting women. Similarly, rumors that show women's stupidity and moral issues have also been favored by masculinity. This is probably what Liu Cixin said about the fundamental difference between men and women in their way of thinking. As long as they are absolutely obedient to animal nature, every man will become a masculinist. He does not have to worry about finding the peak of truth. He just needs to shake his fists and scare people who are weaker than him, so that they have to flatter him, and then he can turn his favorite rules into the peak of truth, and establish his country of truth here. There are humiliation and satire of women everywhere, thus forming a systematic exclusion and suppression of them in real resource allocation. It constitutes a politeness to men, and the masculinists thus feel the pride of being born as men, and at least in front of women, he regards himself as the supreme power. Therefore, no shortage of people chasing a woman who has a high salary position or has learned important new skills, shouting women are not suitable for this. Negative rumors about female driver, female judge, and female leader are spread as quickly as the wind by patriarchal group, as if the women's crime always deserves more than death. In social public opinion such as film and television series adapted from news reports and real events, the distorted facts of not mentioning women for good things, not mentioning men for bad things are common. News reports hide the subject of male perpetrators and use a style of writing in which sublime words with deep meaning generally while praising men and criticizing women, which is really common. There's no need to say how many years have passed since Diao Aiqing died of dismemberment case in Nanjing College of Adult Education, but the murderer has not been arrested. A scriptwriter added a scene of killed for having emotional disputes with the murderer in the adapted television series with no respect for the deceased and her family at all, just as light as people's habit of convicting the woman of betraying a man when she is beaten by him. There is no need to talk about the classic routine of hesitation in protecting pregnant women or fetuses during difficult childbirth scene, and finally people ever discard her as a container when she is still alive in Chinese TV series. What is most annoying is the Matilda effect, which refers to the fact that women's achievements and merits are belittled, ignored, and even directly attributed to men's behavior. During the epidemic, there were obviously a large number of female medical staff who helped Hubei, but the TV series The Most Beautiful Retrovert, adapted from this real incident, shows the image of female medical staffs who retreated under the pretext of taking care of the family. An ex-scion, a male police officer who redeems everyone in The Knockout, whose most well-known prototype is Officer Ren Changxia, who is known as the goddess of the police. Lao Fan, the protagonist of The Last Lesson. His prototype is the rural female teacher Fang Pinger, and many plots in the movie are her real experiences. But the main creator has changed the man to a woman. The prototype of the story bottom line is about a mom named Zhang Cholian who upholded justice for her daughter who had been killed. But the main creator adapted the prototype from the mother to the girl's boyfriend. Not only do they distort history in the deeds of Chinese women, but they also do not spare foreign women. The female nurse Nightingale was sexually converted into a male medical staff of the same name and made a personal deeds film, Mr. Nandingale. Linnie Whiteland saved tens of thousands of refugees from being massacred at the Jinling Women's Arts and Sciences College, but she was beaten by the Japanese army and slandered by the Wang puppet government. After witnessing all kinds of atrocities, she suffered from depression and committed suicide in 1941. Her tombstone was engraved with Jinling Eternal Life. However, in the movie The Flowers of War, based on this history, the image of this female international friend was actually changed to a priest. In history, ancient historians had the tradition of recording celestial phenomena. When the country and the people were at peace and prosperity, if auspicious celestial phenomena occur, the historians would record it as a good omen for the response of heaven and people. They would praise the wiseness of the ruler. However, during the time of women's power, the historian will deliberately miss records of good celestial phenomena or attribute the credit to their husband. Now, female professor Xiao Ruiping developed new dysmenorrhea drugs to treat menstrual abdominal pain for her daughter. As soon as the news came out, not to mention that some media deliberately blurred her gender, and there were some people also lectured netizen who clarified the professor's gender. Even if the professor is a woman, she is loving her children with a male mind. There are countless similar historical events, and countless insults with blood and tears. Once women in masculinistal society show their talents, it never lacks people to rush forward, nailing her to the pillar of shame of ranking below men. Historians and literati steal her achievements and whisper to her and her sisters who were her descendants. This is not something you should meddle in, nor is it where you should come. You should be obedient in assisting men, having children, and taking care of them and your husband. This is your right way. Therefore, language is just a tool for masculinists to create and maintain the values of male interests first, and male is born leading and surpassing female, and is used to cover up the historical fact that the masculinistal group systematically excludes women. The fact is the least important thing to masculinists. Therefore, masculinity completely violates the Marxist-Leninist pursuit of truth. To this day, we are still experiencing this point over and over again. The warrior charging for love is a tragic and cool joke about a man came to have a bone to pick with his girlfriend after he knew she was a philanderer. Even if it was proved to be a rumor, most people were still fooled, and even now many people believe it. The chat records of a female preschool teacher who was disguised by a man poisoning boys because of her animosity to men. The Chinese men are really greasy posting of a post by a man who disguised a woman, and two men disguised themselves as a female overseas student and relative family and daughter-in-law of a corrupt official to post flaunting their wealth, which are both regarded as women's and feminist crimes to be widely spread by masculinists. In the case of Dang Jijun stabbing the female judge Wang Jejia to death, even though the official has issued a notice to clarify that Dang Jijun lied to report losses and failed to commit insurance fraud, so he deliberately killed a person, there are still some people still applauded the murderer. A man in Zhuhai was dissatisfied with the judgment on divorcing property division of divorce, so he drove indiscriminately and collided with pedestrians to retaliate against the judge. The public opinion tendency among the masculinistal group is similar. Regardless of whether information about the woman is clear or not, people also give priority to blaming the wife who divides the man's property. Not to mention the remarks of some people about the Tangshan beating case and the Hangzhou wife murder case. Let's look at the man who killed the male judge who sentenced him to domestic violence. A bunch of people spread rumors that the judge made unfair judgments and shouted, "Good job." The blogger who refutes rumors like these is denigrated as pretending fairness in stopping a fight, but actually help women, and some people even pretend him to pick to fight with others in the comment section of some videos of gender conflicts. So